So viewers, before starting to talk about 3D gardening, I'd like to raise some points that I had considered and chose this model over the other two models. The two models being the terrace gardening and the hydroponics. So let's consider the terrace gardening. The terrace gardens have a lot of advantages as well as disadvantages. One of the disadvantages I found of terrace gardening is that in an area of hot and arid regions like Kutch, the terrace tends to get very hot, something above 45 degrees Celsius. So that is a lot of heat. And in this case, the terrace garden almost withers and the plants cannot grow as they should. And this is the one of the disadvantages that I found in terrace gardening and why it's not successful in places like Kutch. Another disadvantage is that we have to collect the pots and the containers. Now, it might be sounding simple and easy, but when we collect pots and containers, it also adds to the weight of the terrace. And this is another additional disadvantage that your terrace will have. It will have to sustain that weight. It can range from something like 100 kgs or to a couple of tons also. So that depends on how much you want soil and containers you want to transfer on the terrace. And this is not a very good thing according to Vastu Shastra and simple science. So that was one of the other disadvantages that I realized. Another disadvantage is that there is no connection with the earth, something called the bioelectrical field. You can search it up in Google. So this is one of the things that is very necessary for plants to grow. Earthworms, small ants, small insects. These are the kind of things that you will see on the floor or on the ground level, and this cannot necessarily be seen on the top floor. And these are very beneficial to the plants that are growing in the area. And when you have these things working for you, they are like small laborers working day and night to make your soil more fruitable, and they simply are not existing on terrace gardens. So that's why I chose not to go with terrace gardens. Another disadvantages of terrace gardens is that water tends to seep into the floor of the terrace. So it might be a small crack somewhere and the water starts to seep in. This might not be such a big deal, but if you have a terrace which has no tiles over it, it might be a very dangerous situation where the water actually starts to corrode away the iron bars, and this may actually make a very dangerous situation in which your life of the ceiling is reduced drastically. So it will create a very heavy or very expensive repair work afterwards. When we talk about terrace space, I found that I like my living space as well as my terrace space. And when we put the pots on the terrace, we tend to lose out on this kind of space. Another point that I'd like to make is that in terrace gardening, the size of the pot matters a lot. So when the plant is growing and its roots are intertwining with other roots, and this also creates exchange of nutrients and minerals, which is not necessarily possible in terrace gardens. In terrace gardens, you will be able to grow one or two maximum in a single container, and this can be disadvantageous also, where intermingling of other kind of roots of other plants is not possible. Also, another disadvantage of terrace gardening is that the limited size of the container actually limits the amount of fruits that can be gotten. Like in a simple example, if we have so much of surface area in which the roots can grow, the tree or the plant can grow so much, and after that the limited amount of root that it cannot explore also limits the amount of growth that the tree cannot accomplish. So that's another disadvantage. Composting can also be not done together. In 3D gardening, we see that the compost can be left together with the plants that are growing. In terrace gardening, we have to do the composting separately. This is another disadvantage and also time consuming job. Another disadvantage of terrace gardens is that you have to go up and water the plants. Now, either you can have sophisticated systems that do the watering, or you have to go up yourself and do the watering. In this case of 3D gardens, we can water the plants at the ground level, and this is a very advantageous thing that I have realized, advantage of the 3D gardens. Last but not least, the temperature maintained inside of the house is from one side in terrace gardens. So we have the top floor, that is covered with the greenery, as opposed to 3D gardens which has the front side also covered with the greenery. So you have two places from which the covering, the green covering happens, and so your temperature also is maintained at a very decent level, and you have something like 5 to 10 degrees, as I mentioned before, a 10 degrees drop inside the house. This is very beneficial, especially if you're living in a hot climate, and this can add to your quality of life also, and also reduce your AC bills and all this inconvenience that you have of using modern gadgetry to cool your houses down. You can have a natural form of cooling like this. You will be attracting the bees also, because the flowerings of the harvest will be there, the flowerings of the vines will be there also, so the bees will make a home nearby. And all in all, it will be just a great thing if you are using this kind of practices. So these were some of the reasons why I chose 3D gardening over terrace gardening, and in my next videos we will look at some of the disadvantages of hydroponics also. Thank you.